Morena, everybody. We'll declare the meeting open. First of all, the Chair's opening statement. I remind all present that the open session of this meeting is being live streamed and recorded, and that a recording will be made available on the Bay of Plenty Regional Council's website following the meeting. I also remind all present that local government decision-making affords no protection to councillors, council officers, and the public for comments made during the meeting that are subsequently challenged in a court of law and determined to be slanderous. Councillor Tafau, could you please open with a karakia, please?
Tēnā koe, Mr. Chair, tēnā tātou. Can you hear me? Are they on? Can you hear me? Oh, you can hear Mawera? Sarah?
Yep, totally can.
Okay, ka pai. We just can't hear in here, but he te pai. Kia tīmata tātou I raro I te karakia. Kia tau te rangi Māori o rangi nui e tū honei o Papatūnuku e takoto nei o te tai ao e awhi nei ki rungi a tātou o Toimoana e taunei te hei Māori ora. Oh, there you go. May the peace of the sky above, oh, definitely that today, of the earth below, as we of Toimoana embrace the universe and its surroundings upon us. Behold, it is life. Now it's really loud. Te hei Māori ora kia tātou katoa.
Thank you for that. Apologies. We have an apology from Councillor McMillan, and we also note on Zoom Councillors Kumar, Karatai and McCorkindale. Could someone move that the apologies be accepted, please? Thank you, Councillor Dougal. Second, Councillor Scrimmager. All in favour say aye. Against, carried. Public forum. Nobody has applied to speak at our public forum. Item 3, items not on the agenda.
Chair, I'd like to make a personal statement at a professional time. Thank you.
So Councillor McDougall has asked that he raise a matter relating to the appointment of independent members to committees. And with your indulgence, we'll add that to the end of the open part. So I'll move that be approved. Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Eadie. Is there any discussion? I'll put that. All in favour say aye. Against, carried. Order of business. There is no change to the order of business. Are there any conflicts of interest on items on this report? None. Any public excluded business to be transferred into the open. Those items are often transferred after a period of time at the discretion of the Chief Executive. Moving over. So the first report are the minutes of the Risk Assurance and Efficiency Committee of March the 18th. Which are in our agenda is item 7.1. Are there any questions, queries or corrections with regard to those minutes? Not, do we have a mover and a seconder to adopt them? Thank you, Bruce. Second Chair, Mata Moana. There's no further discussion. I'll put those. All in favour say aye. Against, carried. Into the agenda items proper. The first is the chairperson's report on item 8.1, and I'll ask Matt to work us through those.
Thank you, Chair, and Morena, councillors and Bruce. So the chairperson's report for this committee highlights the work programme for the committee, the completed work programme so far for this terranium, and also the forward work programme for the rest of the calendar year. So they're highlighted in the appendices. Just to highlight one other matter relating to the efficiency element of this committee's work programme, so risk assurance and efficiency. And Steve Slack, through the presentation of item 8.4 later on in the agenda, will provide some information on value for money and efficiency specifically. So even though you won't necessarily see the detail in that work programme there, hopefully the report that Steve will highlight through his presentation on 8.4 will be the beginning of the conversation on where efficiency sits within the council's work programme and this committee's work programme, and then we will receive any direction on that item for further information or reports that you want specifically relating to efficiency. So I just wanted to highlight that, Chair. Nothing else to add to the report.
Thank you, Matt. Are there any questions or queries with regard to this report? This is really just updating meeting by meeting where we're at with the completed work program, and we have a new work program planned shortly. If not, could we have a move and a seconder for that report? Thank you, Kate. Seconder, thank you, Bruce. I'll put that all in favour, say aye. Against, carried. Now on to 8.2. This is the Risk Assurance Efficiency Committee's report on the audit of the LTP Amendment Consultation Document 24 to 34. And welcome to Kamaran and Anton and Mariska, who are independent auditors. And Kamaran, if you can work us through this, please.
Yeah, Chair and committee members, this report is essentially providing you insight into Audit New Zealand's report on the audit of the consultation document that was consulted with the public. I'll take the report as read, and we have Anton and Mariska here from the Audit Office to take any questions and present any key messages from their report.
Welcome, Anton. Do you want to lead off? And there may be some questions after your report. Just for a moment, we're not sure. Yeah, it's not working.
Hello. Yeah,
That's better.
sorry. Very loud. Yes, so it just goes through our report to the long-term plan, highlighting that we issued a unqualified opinion, which basically means we satisfied the consultation document provides a sound and reasonable basis for public participation in your decision-making. And also, it also reflects the reasons for the proposed amendment, outlines the key issues and choices facing the region, is supported by reasonable underlying information and assumptions. Importantly, there was no uncorrected misstatements identified during the audit, which reflects the quality of the information presented. Our key focus areas, as we noted, or as I noted earlier, the consultation document meets the requirement of the Local Government Act and is effective for engaging the community. The proposed restructure of the council's investment portfolio is not expected to materially impact the LTP financial forecasts, and there was no significant impact on rates, debt, or levels of service based on the information that was available and assumptions adopted. Part of that, we did review the key assumptions underpinning the document, including the investment returns, operating costs, and the treatment of the perpetual preference shares, and found them to be reasonable and appropriately disclosed, noting that some uncertainty remains as expected because it's a forward-looking document. From a broader perspective, the change in the financial strategy and policies are limited and are consistent with the underlying information, and the consultation document clearly communicates this to the public. And then just finally, I would like to acknowledge the council management for the timely and quality information provided throughout the audit process, and then it's contributed to a really good audit process. Looking ahead, our next steps will be to audit the final long-term plan amendment. You will note our full LTP included an emphasis on meta paragraph over the uncertainty on the delivery of the capital program, so that will remain unchanged. So consultation has been completed, and we've just started this week the final audit of the amendment. So thank you, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Yeah, thank you, Anton. I was just reflecting on page 30 of your report around quality and timeliness of information provided for audit, which is fine. You went through quite an iterative process of 3 drafts, etc. personal observation, in hindsight, it's a wonderful thing. And this actually came up when we started consulting, particularly around our TLA colleagues, etc. The document itself was a hard read, very hard, and appreciating there were some complex issues there. I think in hindsight, we could have made it a bit more reader friendly, even for people like ourselves that constructed the issues for consultation. Just the way it was laid out, the really good simple stuff was at the back, and there's a lot of quite complex issues in the front about how we structured it with themes, etc., etc. So I think there's some good learnings there that these documents, and I appreciate they have to go through an audit process, need to be tailored for the reader, not necessarily an institution, either our institution or your institution. So that was just my personal view. I did find it, quite a challenging read, and I know for a fact that some of the constituents that were feeding back found it difficult and misinterpreted in part, which created a bit of angst here and there, to say the least. So I think there's some good lessons to be learned on that. Councillor Maltby, you've got some questions?
Thank you, Chair. First question, operating costs. You've assumed that Rangiru project would stay within Quayside, I think. Does it say? Quayside currently operates in a manner consistent, so notice. What happens if the Rangiru Business Park is actually split off? Does that affect the, perhaps that's a question for Matt, is that there will be extra costs if we create a separate entity?
Yeah, so through you, Chair, so as this is the consultation document audit, that wasn't an assumption that was made that that change would happen. So it is a potential decision, future decision of council, but because it wasn't an underlying assumption of the consultation document, it didn't need to be audited as if that was going to happen. So consultation document puts forward proposals, you assess the assumptions in those proposals, and that wasn't one of the underlying assumptions that
Although
would happen.
option 3 clearly splits.
It sets up potential future entities, and we've just had deliberations on that, and the audit is going through with the deliberations meeting. But the assumption is that you'll be in no worse a financial position if that action's actually taken. So that's the further due diligence work that council still has to undertake, and then you'll make an assessment whether or not it is the right thing to do because of cost being one of the assumptions that you would have. So we haven't costed that out as an assumption and said it would save money or cost money, but that will be something that comes back to council for you to assess. But that wasn't an assumption in the consultation document, and therefore that financial assessment wasn't made.
Okay. Second question, and again, possibly this is for you, Matt. The council assumes that the PPS will not be repaid as part of the proposed structure change. But again, if we go to a trust structure and QHL disappears, then there'll be nothing listed on the stock exchange, and the PPS would have to be repaid, wouldn't it, if we get rid of QHL?
So that's another future decision through the due diligence on the downstream implications of decisions you would take. So if that wasn't an action and that was a pathway you took, you'd be able to make that assessment then. So replacing the PPS with another borrowing instrument might not necessarily cost any more money to the regional council. So that would be further due diligence work that you would take if you adopt your long-term plan amendment.
Right, but it's not something we have to consider under consultation, is that what we're saying?
No.
Okay, right. All right, that's my questions finished. Thank you. Thank you.
Can I
That's
just
right.
clarify, when we use the term, if we don't have QHL, it's just a different legal entity. And I think that's really important to not be out talking about getting rid of QHL. It's just potentially, whether it's the CCTO or a trust, we're still going to be needing to deliver the same. So I think it's important we just watch how we frame up those statements, because it might lead to an expectation that an entity or people don't exist when it might just be a different legal structure that sits around them.
Right, but PPS shares are shares in QHL. So a trust, for example, wouldn't have shares, would it?
Those are separate decisions around whether or not we stick with the the PPS or whether we repay them, and that's a separate discussion. That's sort of a more technical one. It was more about the wider discussion around things existing or not existing. We're not going to go and burn them in a pile. They will potentially just be changing legal structures, is just the point I was making.
And through you, Chair, just because this is a narrowly focused audit on the consultation document, wider matters on PPS and NZX would be a matter for future council discussions, including confidential discussions that you would need to have over that because it's a listed entity. So at the moment, we're just narrowly focused on the consultation document and the audit that was done on the consultation document.
So potentially would that lead to more consultation or?
Potentially, we have
Could do.
that due diligence is still yet to come. At the moment, the consultation document audit said that it was a good consultation document that met all the legal requirements. And you've now undertaken deliberations on that consultation, and then you'll be seeking to do an LTP amendment later this month.
Thanks, Matt.
Councillor Shirley.
Thank you, Chairman. In your report, you had the statement that the council's decision to enable the divestment of Quayside's shares in Ports of Tauranga had no impact on the market price. In fact, the market price has appreciated considerably over that same period since that enabling decision was made. So I'm just, are you saying that that was a coincidence, or what criteria did you use to make that assertion?
What we were trying to say there is the fact that you're consulting and the underlying information itself is not going to drive the market prices that we could see. However, as I did state, this is all forward looking. We can't predict the future and what's driving market prices.
Thank you. Are there any other questions, comments? Anton, do you have any other comments as a result of the discussion to date?
No.
So, colleagues, we have a recommendation. In 8.2, we received this report. We have a move and a second, please. Thank you, Councillor Maltby. Second, Councillor Grathing. There's no further discussion. I'll put that. All in favour say aye. Against, carried. Thank you, Anton and Mariska. The next report revolves around rate setting and legal compliance. Incredibly important that we get this legal compliance 100%. There are some horror stories around where rates have been set that aren't legally compliant, and it ends up one very difficult, embarrassing, and requires Parliament to change sometimes. Kamara, just to talk to this, please.
Thank you, Chair. So as outlined by the Chair, this report provides the committee an overview of the process followed to ensure that the rates recommendations that will be presented to you in a report on the day you adopt your annual plan is legally compliant. And that involves seeking services from an external independent legal advisor to do checks on the legal compliance on the draft rates resolutions and the consistency of the rates resolutions with the funding impact statement. In addition to that, the process within which that step is included entails reviewing of the annual plan budget, running of simulated rate setting processes through the rating system and the finance system as a collaborative effort between the finance and rates teams, investigating any outliers that comes through that process and addressing those variances, and also carrying out a targeted review of the minor rivers and drainage scheme rates, which is run under a separate model, and then doing a external legal review of the rates resolutions and the funding impact statement, and then a final consistency check with those rates recommendations in accordance with the Council's long-term plan and the revenue and financing policy. So once that's done, the next steps then is for the final rates amounts to be confirmed and the relevant dates, and to do a final comparison of the rates resolutions with the funding impact statement, which then gets presented in a report to council on the day you adopt your annual plan, to adopt your annual plan and the rates resolutions or recommendations that will be put forth in front of you, with the assurance that it's gone through an independent legal review process for compliance purposes.
Thank you, Kamaran. Are there any questions or queries of the report? If not, we have a recommendation that we receive it and note the legal review has been completed. Who was the external auditor?
So the legal advisor was Simpson Greason.
Councillor Shirley, did you have a question? No. Happy to move it. And second, Councillor Defoe. If there's no further questions, I'll put that. All in favour, say aye. Against, carried. Thank you, Kamaran. So the next report is probably the main report of this agenda item, presented by Stephen Slack and Clive Goff. Quite a comprehensive report that looks at a relatively new system that I can see of our audit framework and work plan, and incorporating value for money and efficiencies and those things that we wanted to build in to our system. So welcome, gentlemen. I understand you have a presentation first.
So I do have a presentation, but potentially we'll work through the first items in the report first, and then move on to the presentation and the value for money after Clive's done his piece. So I'll pass over to you, Clive.
Morning. Thank you, Chairman. Tēnā koutou katoa. As mentioned at the last committee meeting, we now submit the internal audit framework comprising the internal audit charter, internal audit protocol, which are aligned with the new global internal audit standards issued in 2025 for your consideration and approval. Please note there is a drafting error in the internal audit framework, which refers to the Audit, Risk and Efficiency Committee when it should read Risk Assurance and Efficiency Committee. In addition, we've submitted the internal audit work plan for 26-27 for your review and approval. It concentrates on internal audits in the areas of information technology, meeting expectations, financial sustainability, legislative compliance, people and data analytics. We take the report as read and will respond to any questions.
Did anyone have questions on that part of the report?
And firstly, thank you very much for the report. It was a really good read over the last couple of days. In regards to people, and we've got health and safety post-implementation and legislative reforms, in the global setting, is there anything that refers to the cultural safety aspect in the audit process moving forward?
So cultural safety is one of the things we do consider in terms of health and safety, and we work closely with the Te Aomarangi team in terms of that. So it is definitely something that, as part of our wellness program, we are looking at what we're doing in both in terms of psychological safety and cultural safety. So it is part of what we're looking at going forward.
Okay, and is that implemented or written in the full document somewhere to identify that as a potential risk or potential health and safety avenue that we're taking?
It's not currently written anywhere in terms of our health and safety program. Like I said, this is one of the things that we're working with the people and capability team in terms of looking at how we look at cultural safety across the organisation. So it's on our agenda in terms of our program.
Great. And do you have a time frame or timeline of when those discussions will be having?
So that is on our agenda for the next 12 months, is looking at that psychological safety aspect, including incorporating in cultural safety in terms of what we're looking at there.
Cool. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Just for Councillor Scrimmager, Clive, how do the charters and the protocols, which are good pieces of work, how are they actually executed internally?
Once these are approved, we will publish them so that they are available for councillors and for staff. The protocol is basically the process that we follow. So that is the rules, for want of another word, that we use when we are carrying out our audits. So it's quite structured, and there are particular points at which we stop. We talk to management about the work we're doing, where we've got to, if there's anything that requires urgent intervention from management, we would bring that to their notice. And yeah, we just really work our way through that process. And there are opportunities for managers to review the work that we have done, make sure that we've fully understood, and make sure that our reports are a true reflection of what's happening in the particular area that we're auditing.
Councillor Scrimgeour.
Yeah, thank you. I agree with Councillor Defoe that this made an interesting read over the last day or two. But I'm just looking at the section headed value for money, and there's some good words there about getting bang for your buck, etc. But there's also, it talks about understanding costs and cost drivers in the organisation. So I'm just interested to know how you do that. Does the organisation do any benchmarking of what costs for services are in other organisations, or how do they go about trying to assess and ensure that we're getting comparable value to other organisations?
So potentially I can talk you through the value for money part of the report. So there is, but in terms of that, there is some benchmarking that is done across local government in terms of specific areas. So there is benchmarking that is attempted across different local government organisations to look at those types of things. But potentially, like I say, as part of this report, I was asked to look at the efficiency part of the risk assurance and efficiency committee, and so I've just put together what that effectively means in terms of efficient use of resources and value for money. So I can happily take you through a bit of a report in terms of what that means in the different areas and how we can build that into the program going forward. But there is already some benchmarking does happen across councils in certain areas, but we're looking to do that more in terms of the various I guess programs that you put in place through the long-term plan to build that into the program going forward as well. So,
from my point of view, to give us confidence, it would be helpful to go through that and have that explanation of what you do.
Sure. So I'll go through the presentation and talk about value for money in terms of what that looks like going forward. So, yeah, when we're talking about value for money in local government, so where am I? So in terms of local government, so traditionally when we're thinking about value for money, it's about you getting the most, like you said, bang for your buck in terms of using the public resources responsibly to achieve our outcomes, and it includes balancing costs, quantity, and risk, and aligning with the priorities that you set in terms of the long-term plan. In terms of, I'll probably skip through this a little bit. So there's 5 kind of categories of what we talk about in terms of value for money. Traditionally, when we're talking about value for money, they focus on the first 3: economy, efficiency, and effectiveness. But in terms of public sector, there's 2 overarching additional E's that are mentioned in terms of cost effectiveness and equity that go across all of those other 3 in terms of what we're doing. So in terms of I'll flick through that because I'll go through each individually. So in terms of economy, flip through these slides because it's doing it differently on my screen. So economy is the first thing we think about in terms of value for money, and that's in terms of, are we spending the money wisely? Are we, doing it cost effective in terms of procurement, avoiding unnecessary expenditure, balancing cost and quantity? Oops, that's gone ahead. And sorry. Using two screens is difficult. So are we using the money economically in terms of getting the best prices, that type of thing? Do we have things in place to ensure that we are using that money effectively? Some of the things that we have in place already in terms of that is like collaborating with other councils, shared services, and making sure that whenever we're making decisions, we look at the most cost conscious thing that we're doing in that space. Look through that. Some of the risks of just focusing on economy, though, that sometimes the lowest price is not always the best. So it's about balancing the price and also what you're getting for that money. It's also looking at the long-term impacts of the economy. Sometimes you can do things, spend money economically in the short term, but it has long-term implications. So it's balancing those things as well. Efficiency is the other traditional thing that we look at in terms of, are we using those resources efficiently? Why is that not popped up? And that's about maximizing the use of those resources to the maximum effect. So using those resources to have as minimal waste as possible and having that quality come through. And so we're always looking to make sure that those things are being, that we're using those resources efficiently, looking at technical improvements, looking at ways that we can improve digital implementation to make things more efficiently, looking at ways now that AI can be used potentially to improve efficiency, that type of thing. But again, it's making sure we balance efficiency with service quality. So making sure that if we are becoming more efficient, that we maintain the quality in terms of what we're doing. Effectiveness is effectively around looking at what the outcomes are of those, using those resources efficiently. So are we getting what we expected to get from the resources we put in? So that kind of comes into, are we measuring those outcomes effectively? Are they aligning with the community needs? Are we getting the most effective thing that we can from those resources? And that's where some of that benchmarking comes in terms of, are we looking at how other things are, what the effectiveness is compared to other types of organizations so that we can evaluate for improvement. And then the other two areas, like I said, the public sector goes across the board generally, is the cost effectiveness. And so that's stepping back and looking out at, what are the other alternatives that could do the same result? Because you can choose one alternative and do those other three things effectively. So you can do it economically, efficiently, and it's effective, but there might be other alternatives that could do the same thing for less value. So cost effectiveness is in terms of stepping out and looking at, what are the other alternatives that might produce the same result, and have we explored those or looked at those other alternatives? And sometimes I think of it in terms of the ambulance at the top of the bottom of the cliff versus the fence at the top. So we could have an ambulance at the bottom of the cliff, and we've got the most economic ambulance, effective ambulance, and efficient ambulance, but we could have put a fence at the top and not needed that. So yeah, that's stepping back and looking at things in terms of the alternatives that you can take place in terms of how we deliver things. And then the hardest, probably the thing overall is the equity piece, which goes across everything in terms of, are we delivering equitable results for the community? And that's stepping back again in terms of, are we achieving what we wanted to achieve equitably across various aspects of our community? And there were, potentially looking at, there were some examples there in terms of equity of access, equity of outcomes and impacts. And then in terms of, I guess, the governance role is, in terms of this committee as well, is that strategic leadership and oversight in terms of setting the direction, in terms of what are the areas you would like us to look at. And that, again, that part of the long-term plan is setting that direction and giving us a steer in terms of these are the areas that we want to have reporting on. And then through our audit function, we'll be able to deliver in those specific areas. I think I mentioned in the report that the presentation now in the report talks about how you do those assessments and the measures that can take place. And some of those measures, like you mentioned, are benchmarking across different organisations, looking at different outcomes for each of those different activities, and where you're looking at bigger programs, the amount of qualitative information you need to compare is different from the quantitative. So when you're looking at quite small things, you can focus very much on the quantitative elements, and then when you're looking at big pieces of work, then the qualitative stuff in terms of feedback from the community becomes more important. So the framework that's been identified, I guess, in this paper is just kind of the high level. What we anticipate going forward will be taking a direction from you as part of the long-term plan in terms of those areas you'd like us to do these types of assessments in, and then building that into our program going forward so that we can have a more structured way of reporting back to this committee in terms of the value for money assessments. Happy to take some questions on that.
Yeah, thanks, Steve. Can we have a copy of that full slide deck?
Sure.
There was a lot in there, I appreciate, and jumping all over the place, we might have lost
No,
a
that's-
little bit
yeah.
of the flow.
That's fine.
But you did highlight, the issues that relate to the framework. So if that could be sent out. Okay.
Thank you, through the chair. Thanks for the presentation and the information. I just had a question around the equity side of things, and I wondered if there was some scope to look at possibly something around ability to pay, and if that was an appropriate consideration or measure to have in there.
Yeah, that would be in terms of, and again, that's the, I guess, taking that direction from the count from you guys in terms of what you want us to look at. But certainly there's a lot of different areas in terms of equity, and that is one of the areas in terms of how that burden, I guess, is shared across various parts of our community. And so as part of that assessment, that could be one of the criteria that we look at in terms of, is that burden shared appropriately in terms of who has the ability to pay and who doesn't. So I guess there are a lot of factors that can be taken into account, and that can be certainly one of them in terms of if that's an area that the council wants to look at as part of those assessments, we can definitely build that in.
I mean, I would support that, given we have this cost of living pressure, and that has different impacts on different parts of the community depending on their socioeconomic status. So I would certainly support that being included.
Through you, Chair, the revenue and financing policy of the council is one of the key policy levers that you have to assess equity. So the mechanism for affordability to individual ratepayers, the modelling that's done when the LTP is going through that process, that's one of the times when you do make that assessment and may adjust targeted rates, general rates, UAGC, all of the matters that come through every long-term plan. So Steve's highlighting the concepts of equity, but they already are built into your policy framework and the development of the long-term plan. So it's just, I guess, Steve highlighting that as we go through the development of the long-term plan, that this is a key equity lever that you'd want to set. And council's already asked for some information leading into your next long-term plan relating to equity and affordability. So You do that each time in the long-term plan, and we'll highlight that through these workshops that you have coming up in August and September for your next long-term plan.
So I'm concluding from that, Matt, that we've got it in there as a consideration through the
Yes.
long-term plan stuff. We don't need to.
The Local
anything
Government Act
additional,
requires
yeah.
you to take that into account, and I think it's just highlighting that this is the place that will make the difference, where impact of fees and charges rates actually land on the community. So first of all, the level of service, because someone's got to pay for that, but then how that cost of that is distributed over the community through fees and charges rates. So yeah, we do that as part of the long-term plan cycle with workshops and looking at assessments of where those costs would fall. So yeah, we'll do that. And I think August and September time is when Kamaran's team has got some information coming back for you on rates as an example, where you'll be able to make that assessment about whether there is an equitable distribution of costs or not, and whether you want to change any of the current settings.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Value for money, I think, is a great way to alleviate costs on the community. So I'm a big supporter of value for money. So well done, guys. Now, my comment is possibly, as we know, there's a lot of structural changes coming to local government. So part of my comment is going to be overshadowed, but also it could be useful in setting up those changes. So I just wondered, the structure of the organisation and how well the organisation is built has a huge effect on value for money, and how you and that's not necessarily picked up with KPIs and other measures like that. I mean, do you look at the organisation and say, well, this could be better if we do it a different way? Is that part of your analysis?
So, so in terms of the audits we've done previously, so that has always been one of the areas that we have looked at in terms of, are there other in terms of within that specific audit area, are there other ways of doing this that we think could be done more efficiently that has been built into those previous audits in terms of looking at that. I guess this is just a more structured way of building that out and doing more of it, to have a more structured way of going forward in terms of looking at those alternatives.
Certainly, as we go forward to restructuring, if there are any ways we could improve that, it's a very opportune time to build it in to whatever comes next. So,
Thank you. Just before Bruce, thank you for a report. It's really interesting. And the framework, having worked in my own account in the private sector and then quite a while in the public sector, I do appreciate there are differences, particularly when it comes to equity and particularly short-term versus long-term. Private sector don't particularly think long-term at all. But in saying that, often I've observed in local government world that we have over-analysis and too much process versus good judgment and current expertise. And in a way, you overlay that with the risk appetite as well. So in all this, I'd be interested to know, in my view, we have some highly talented staff in this organisation and in local government generally, which is overshadowed in a way by process. And what I mean by that, numerous times, not necessarily here, but in other places, I've seen a relatively simple procurement or project cost a lot more because the process overrides the skill sets that live within. And I've seen many a time consultants being involved when they don't need to be, and good judgment not being exercised because of process. Now that's just a very high level overview of experience both in the private and public sector. But what I'd really like to see in local government is some private sector principles of using your own skill sets and good judgment more. And I'd be interested in your view on that. We've got two experts here. I know, Clive, you've been working in the space for a very long time, and Steve, you've been working in this organisation a long time. And I'll be interested to know that principle of trying to reduce analysis and using your own good judgment is buried in here somewhere. If it isn't, as a culture of the organisation, I'm pointing to the CEO here, I'd like to see that it is. I hope it is, because we've got some great people here.
Respond to that. I can give you an example. The government procurement rules are in the process or have just recently been changed. And that is exactly the focus, to move away less from process and for people to be able to make decisions based on their experience and the type of procurement that's going to be incurred. So I believe it is already starting to happen, and I think you will see some significant changes going forward. And we've had sessions with our procurement team where we've talked about this and talked about how they need to change the way they go about their procurement and how they need to make sure that they select the right projects to put an intense process in place and the right projects where we move away from an intense process.
Thank you for that. I'll just wind that up by experience, and Councillor Maltby touched on it. As we head into potential local government reform, when the previous reform was instituted, local after 89, we were forced to contract everything out. And we had this ridiculous situation for about 5 or 6 years where we contracted everything out. We had consultants monitoring the contract and we had staff monitoring the consultants. Now, believe me, this did happen for quite a long period of time. That's how ridiculous it got. And thank you, Clive. It's good to hear that we're winding that back. And I think as we look forward to some form of local government reform, we make sure, that principle of using internal staff skill sets flows through. Bruce.
In some ways, I'd like to segue to that. And the question of method here, I like the presentation. I like the simple diagrams, by the way. And I think in lots of ways, Stephen, what we're trying to do here is make certain we have a common language around value for money. And I guess I've got two questions. One, Clive, are we going to do specific value for money studies through your work program, or are you going to bring the lens of value for money into every bit of internal audit work that you do?
Yes, I think the intention is to, first of all, get some direction from yourselves on the value for money area, and then make sure that in every individual audit that we do, we consider the value for money in each of those audits and report on them. And we will develop that through developing the scope. We will decide how are we going to measure value for money in this particular audit. So that will be available for review when we do the detailed scoping.
I think it would be great for us to be able to reinforce our governance speak around value for money if each of the reports does actually specifically report on what aspect has been scoped in. Again, with the diagrams and what have you, because I think that's an important discipline. It raises me then really another question. In some sense, I wanted to ask this of councillors, because I think it almost goes back to the question you asked, Kate. I was in the room when you guys decided to put efficiency into the title. What did you mean by that? And does this meet that test? I'm looking your way, Glenn, because I think you're the one that promoted the view. I'm not blaming you, mate, but I'm just wanting to say, when we talk efficiency as governors, what do we mean? Because value for money, efficiency is 1/5 of the total value for money equation.
have we actually got the right focus on what we really intended when you said, or you expanded the scope of the risk committee? I'm probably asking Glenn that question. I'm asking everybody that question because I think, you know, one of the important parts here is efficiency was a really strong driver, and the word efficiency was used a lot rather than value for money. Now, I don't have any trouble with value for money, but I think, and Tim, I might even be in behind some of your questions. Really, it struck me that governance were really concerned about, are we efficient? So the question becomes, are we driving because are we driving the efficiency aspect to your satisfaction, or are you happy for it to be broadened out to the value for money scope?
I'd like to see it broadened out because ultimately value for money is what we need to deliver.
Well, I was just thinking about the conversations and reflecting on that question when we were in discussions and hearing submitters on our long-term plan. And one of the things that kept coming back to the forefront was the multiplying impact of how we can distribute funds to communities and to some of our community trust groups or our care groups. And in that regard, our dollars spent had a multiplying effect, which was much greater than we could deliver individually.
Yeah.
So I think the thing that is front and center of my mind isn't just about efficiency and effectiveness in terms of our own staff and within our own organisation, but bringing that lens to how we use our funding within the wider community context. And I think that really came through for me with the consultation and the hearings process we went through. I wouldn't distinguish necessarily strictly between efficiencies and necessarily good value for money across the organisation. I think they kind of morph on the same spectrum, and we should be looking at it more holistically in terms of value for money. But yeah, in terms of the efficiency, getting more for the dollar spent, I think that's a conversation outside, even beyond our individual organisation.
Thank you. I mean, all I'm trying to be provocative is actually perhaps we should change the name of our committee to value for money rather than efficiency.
Yeah.
No, in all seriousness, I think it's important. I mean, I'm hearing lots of really good, encouraging conversation around the broader principle of value for money, and the audit office is also bringing this into their work. Actually, I think it's important that we actually reflect what we want to achieve, and if we're going to have it in the name, and I think actually we better say risk and assurance, and I know it makes probably the longest titled committee I'm on. Value for money committee would make a lot of sense to me. If we otherwise, efficiency has got a narrow sense, and we probably should be broader. Thank you.
I like VFM. It's got a good acronym. It's better than RAEC committee.
That's right.
VFM.
Thank you. So the batting order, we've got Sarah, Mawera, and then Ken. Sarah.
Thank you. I'm really interested in this conversation around value for money, particularly looking at the 2-year horizon. You know, we're all well aware that, you know, regional councils, as they are now, cease to exist 2 years from now. So I want to have the conversation within that context of local government reform. And so there are 2 parts to my thinking and my questioning. And the first is around, I think when we start measuring and reporting on value for money, data, the metrics that you used in your slide pack were really, really useful. For example, the cost of per kilogram of nitrogen removed. Those are really, really useful metrics that we can track back to a particular function of regional council, which will no doubt end up living in another organisation. I query the value of developing anything large scale and new at cost to the organisation when we don't know what the organisation will look like in 2 years. And I think we just have to have front of mind, and this is part of my questioning, what will be the costs of developing this program and over what period of time? And are those costs actually going to deliver the benefits that we want? And who will they end up delivering benefits to if we don't exist down the track? So I think we just need to keep that 2-year horizon really strongly in our minds, look at the value for money program as it tracks back to functions and make sure that the knowledge that we gain from this work is completely transferable through into a new organisation.
Thank you, Sarah.
That's all from me. Thank you.
Awera?
I find that this notion of value for money is this new language that's coming out of the current government, and actually it has never been the purpose of, in the statutory interpretation, value for money has never been the purpose of local government. It might be a constraint on how council acts, but it's not a statement of why it exists. And actually, we have got some really big challenges happening in the community at the moment. And so if we focus on value for money, and let that guide our decision making, it stops us from making some of the hard decisions. So I actually think that that is a really unhelpful perspective. What we need to focus on is getting the jobs done that need to be done. And we can try and find the most efficient and effective way to do that, but not through a value for money lens. That's just really unhelpful, I think. Thank you.
Thank you for that view. Councillor Shirley?
Thank you, Chairman. I take the almost exact opposite position to Councillor Karatai. And I think it's, you should keep top of mind. I'm certainly batting for value for money. I think it's a very good measure, because you can be very efficient, and many organisations are very efficient at being wasteful. And that's the thing to bear in mind.
I'm not promoting being wasteful.
As we move forward, Matt, this has been a good conversation, but I don't think it's complete in terms of our direction. I think off the top of my head here, prior to our LTP conversations, which are starting shortly, we need to spend a bit more time on this so there's clarity of what we're trying to talk about here, and possibly in a workshop scenario rather than a formal committee. It's not very helpful, but this framework is good for starters for 10, but within this framework there's a lot of nuances that we're starting to talk about that we haven't, in my view, completely flushed out yet. And it's good preparation for direction for the 2027-37 LTP. What's your view on moving forward on this?
Did Councillor Defoe have a question that you wanted to jump in with?
Yes, please. Sorry. While it's still in my head, I've just found my other notes. Sorry about Stephen Clive. But I read through the whole framework, the charter and the protocol. And for me, if I don't see something in there, it won't happen or it doesn't happen. And so hence the reason I'm framing back to my cultural safety practices forum. Throughout the whole document, there is nothing in the whole document from the framework, the charter and the protocol and around the intense measures of our unique council. And I say unique council because we're built on a bigger foundation than what is stipulated in here, nor do I see any monitoring implications or implementations to be supported around the safety and the protocols around cultural safety practices. And so for me, I'm finding it a little bit alarming that throughout this whole document, and especially for the next part of the document that you're going to be talking about around the internal audit update, there's nothing that's been done in that either that shows me around our true implementation around taking this very seriously. It's like health and safety is in its peak. And it's about us not only safeguarding our staff members and our people that we interact with, but it's to safeguard us as councillors and as elected members when we actually advocate and support people in this area. And so for you, the Chair, I just want to highlight that throughout this whole document, I have read time again, and it has not got anything in regards to cultural support or cultural aspects around this organisation. And it is something that everyone knows that I'm very passionate about. And when I'm serious in the matter, if I don't see it, it means it's not going to happen or won't happen. And then we end up putting it into the too hard basket, and it just sits there like moldy bread, and it just molds in a corner and it doesn't get recognized or used properly. And so I just want to identify that if we're going to be looking at how this internal audit and updating this internal audit's going to look like, that we really do take this seriously in regards to some of these aspects around cultural safety practices. Thank you.
We've just got Councillor Kumar, who's not on video, so we missed you. Sorry about that, Raj, but do you have a question or a comment?
Yeah, good morning, through the chair. Thank you. Wonderful discussion and some good food for thought. For me, it's value for money when I look at it from our perspective, and being involved with our group since December. I think we have fought robustly. We always look at what we can give the best tangible result to our community. Each one of us, we debate, we pull through. We never think that, hey, look, let's just give it for the sake of giving it. So I think that doctrine of value for money is already instilled with us, and we really care. What really gets me is sometimes the contradiction in this passage that we're going through, that is on one notion it says, well, it's not a notion, it's in wording. In one aspect it says that, hey, look, let's not look at the value for how we give out a contract or project. What's the outcome? I think we've got such a robust team in terms of staff and the knowledge and and what they give to us before we ever impart on a decision and agree to consensus. So I think that's the part that sort of gets to me, is that this is covering a stack for the future, but it's also covering contradiction.
Thank you, Raj. Hey.
Thank you. Just thinking about a future workshop and some of the framing around that, and it particularly goes to what we want to achieve and what we, the cost of not doing things. So actually a council can be incredibly efficient by doing nothing. And so not doing things is a huge cost as well. And so we just need to make sure that, and I think this was the point that Councillor Karatai was making, is there's some really big things that we need to achieve and they come with costs. We want to make sure we are doing them in the best way, but we just have to also keep our eye on what we actually need to do and the cost of not taking action and the budgets that go with that.
Yes, so through you, Chair, I think expanding efficiency to those 5 areas that Steve has in the report, and having measures that then look to balance, when you take all of that into account, whether or not there are opportunity costs that are being missed or the implications of doing levels of service. I think having a workshop and having some of those worked examples that we work through, and Steve did that on one of his presentations, was talking about nitrogen. So going through an example, looking at an activity and having that information and then testing that out, and then that feeding into your long-term plan for levels of service, for assessments of different options that you have, that would be our intention. So we'll work with you, Chair, on a timing for a workshop prior to the next meeting where we can use some of those worked examples across all of these 5 factors, not just the efficiency lens, but the other factors as well, to see if that brings out those matters that councillors are asking for, that broader than just, is it the cheapest, is it the best? You have to take a number of factors into account to see whether or not that level of service is the right level of service for you, and it's affordable, and all of the other matters that have been raised. So we'll do that, Chair.
As a probably a more immediate action, picking up Councillor Defoe's issue around cultural safety and where that sits, could that, Iwi, could you engage with the staff and see where it is sitting? we've told it's there, but, you know, we can't see it obviously in some of the documents, so we just need to have a degree of certainty that, you know, it is
So,
sanctioned.
so through you, Chair, so we'll amend and include in the health and safety part of the audit that's proposed, a specific area in terms of cultural safety, so that we can report back in terms of what we're doing in that space. So I think that would, and by including in that, we'll specifically include in that part of the audit that we're proposing, an area in regards to that, so that to make sure it's covered off.
Yeah, that'd be great. I've just written up how it would look like. So in the next part of your fellows corridor around the internal audit work plan, I'm looking at another column to be added in regards to cultural health or cultural responsibility, whatever it looks like. And that's in 2.1 in the next document. And then in 2.2 of the internal work plan, another row to be added in regards to that cultural measure as well, so that we can identify it and it's actually located in the format of the working document moving forward. But I'm happy to also sit with you both in regards to what does cultural safety and what does cultural support actually mean in the full context, and how we can best support each other moving forward.
We'd appreciate that. So,
And
yeah.
I think General Kataraina O'Brien has got a template that I've given her already for the Te Ara Poutama team. So it's probably utilising that document first and then moving forward, and I can help support you with the next phase moving forward from there. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, can we look at the recommendations on page 37, taking into account the conversations and some immediate tweaking, and later on proposing in due course, Matt, leading up to the LTP, a workshop on these matters. Any other final comments, Tim? Thank you. Councillor Grayling, is any further discussion? If not, I'll put that. All in favour, say aye. Against, carried. And the next report is 8.5, page 54. And again, we have Stephen and Clive presenting this. Internal audit update.
The report shows the 24-25 work plan is now complete, and the 25-26 work plan is complete, except for one audit being moved to the 26-27 plan and two audits which were removed pending legislative changes. We continue to make progress on the outstanding management actions from prior audits, with 6 actions brought forward, 14 added and 4 closed, currently leaving 16 outstanding. We take the report as read and will respond to any questions.
Thank you for that. And it's good to see some of those loose ends being tidied up. Moving forward, what's being proposed in the work plan leading into 27?
So through you, Chair, in terms of the audits so as part of the previous report was the audits that were specified for the next year. So that'll be incorporated into the next update in terms of
27.
Yeah.
26,
27. Yeah.
Sorry. Thank you. Any questions of that? If not, I'll move we receive this report. Do we have a seconder? Thank you. Iwi, if no further conversations, I'll put that. All in favour, say aye. Against, carried. Just before we move into public excluded, we had effectively a late item by Councillor Dougal. Glenn, do you wish to open that conversation?
Thank you, Chairperson Cosby. Thank you for allowing me to speak to this issue. I'd like to move a motion that this Audit and Risk Committee write to the Prime Minister and to the Ministers concerned concern to raise our concern around removing the voting rights for appointed independent committee members. The ability to appoint independent members with voting rights has been a long-standing and valuable governance tool for local government. It supports democracy rather than undermines it. Because these appointments are made by us as democratically elected members. Elected members remain accountable to their communities for deciding when independent experts is needed and who should be appointed. The issue is simple. Independent members are not appointed just to sit in the room and offer occasional advice. They are appointed because they bring expertise, independence, and judgments that strengthens the decisions we make. This is especially important for audit and risk. Elected members cannot be expected to hold every specialised skill in accounting, audit, risk management, and long-term financial oversight. That's exactly why independent members are so valuable. But if we remove their voting rights, we weaken their role. We turn them from committed decision makers into observers, and that's not best practice governance, nor is it consistent with Audit Office recommendations. It restricts council's ability to govern effectively. Councils, we need every practical governance tool available to support sound decision making, especially in the areas involving risk, audit, finance, infrastructure, environmental management, community wellbeing, and long-term strategic planning. This also extends beyond audit and risk. There are many occasions where good governance benefits from independent voice at the table with full voting rights, whether that is youth engagement, hapu and iwi matters, catchment management and catchment funding, environmental issues, academic expertise, and broader community representation. In simple terms, it's like your bacon and eggs that you have for breakfast. The hen is involved, but the pig's really committed. We need our appointed members to be fully committed with voting rights, not just involved. So that means retaining their voting rights. Hence, I move that this committee draft a letter to this effect and it be tabled at our next audit and risk meeting, seeking an exception from this mandate for the Bay of Plenty Regional Council. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Dougal. Because we don't meet that often, it's probably best that a draft letter goes to council or particularly council, I think full council, for consideration and debate and conclusion. So it's good to raise it here, and I think we'll take advice. See that possibly
June 25th.
going to the council on June
25th.
June 25th is our next available meeting, and council covers everything. So that's probably best where that issue can go to. But current thoughts, council's raised it. We can debate it fully with something to look at the full council meeting. But just some issues now, because that might help form the letter if there is to be one. Councillor Shirley.
Thank you, Chairman. I support it going to full council. I would see clarification though, as I understood it, that the proposal by Councillor Dougal was to only seek an exemption for the Bay of Plenty Regional Council, which is somewhat odd if it is a point of principle. But I'd have to indicate, I think the proposal's outrageous. I would certainly oppose it, and I certainly want my vote registered against it.
I was just saying, thank you. I think it's really good to bring to this table. I've been thinking the same thing, and a lot of these conversations have been couched around Māori representation. And I think the elephant in the room is that we have independent representation across multiple different committees, and they all add incredible value. And particularly, I think, with the audit and risk. So I'd 100% support it going to council or wherever, so that we can formally endorse that letter. And whether it be that we actually are not supportive of it in its entirety, or whether it's Bay of Plenty specific, we can work that out. But I definitely support what Councillor Dougal brought to the table. Thank you.
Other early comments at this stage? Sarah.
Thank you. And thank you, Glenn, for bringing this up for discussion. I really just want to endorse that I think this is a discussion for full council and not for this committee. And one of the reasons I say that is we have an independent appointee on this committee, and I think that actually undermines any messaging that goes forward to central government from this committee. Whereas if we remove that variable and any messaging goes from full council, I think it actually gives it more weight. And I think we actually need an opportunity to have a decent discussion around what we think are the implications. And also, the value of it, given that there are just 2 years to run for regional councils. I would also be in support of if we do put something forward to central government, we do it with our local government allies, and it's a much broader nationwide conversation rather than just being pertinent to the Bay of Plenty Regional Council.
Thank you for that. Jenny, you'll put it on the screen shortly, which is pretty next move's recommendation.
Oh, I think it's
Chair.
I think you're doing exactly what I was going to say, and my suggestion was this goes to full council as a recommendation from this council because that's where it's been raised. But I think I can hear you talking too.
So Jenny, it'd be agrees to recommend to council to draft a letter.
Yeah.
Although taking on board what Councillor McCorkindale raised, would it be better instead of the endorsement coming from this committee that this matter be tabled for discussion and resolution at a subsequent full council meeting? So it's not actually a resolution from this committee?
No, it just goes we just recommend it goes as a recommendation to full council from this committee.
This is always a risk of drafting stuff that's not on an agenda, but we will get there. We just need to be clear. It's quite straightforward. So agrees to recommend to council to draft a letter to central government in opposition to the removal of voting rights of non-elected members to council to debate and decide June 25th. That's the general thrust of it. We might need to wordsmith it a bit, but so that's been moved by Councillor Dougal. Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Grayling. Is there any other conversations just on this next step?
And it's been pointed out that I probably have a vested interest. I won't vote on this for. There's a bit of irony there, but I think I'll just stand aside from the voting if that's okay.
Thank you. We will note that. If there's no further discussion, I'll put that recommendation. All in favour, say aye. Against?
No. Could I have it recorded, please?
Yep. That's still carried by a majority. So, colleagues, that ends the open session. So we need a move and a second to move into public excluded, and we'll stop the live streaming. Do you wish to have a short break, or you want to carry on?